Welcome to CNBC.com. I'm Frank Holland, anchor of Worldwide Exchange. We are looking at the ETF action this week. Year to date, net ETF inflows, they've topped $645 billion, according to the latest data from Verify. Join me now to discuss some of the action in the ETF market. I'm joined by Phil McInnis, Avantis Investors by American Century Investments. He is their Chief Investment Strategist. Phil, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks, Frank. Pleasure to be here.
I just want to start off, just get your take on the ETF market year to date. Have you seen any recent inflection points, or has it been just pretty much a steady climb all year?
Steady climb. I mean, well, nothing feels steady about this year, right? If we think about Q1 and Q2, a lot going on. But I would say there's a couple things that definitely stand out. One for me, if we think about ETFs, there's passive ETFs and there's active ETFs. At Avantis, we manage active ETFs. And if you look at the market share there between passive and active, it's heavily skewed toward passive. So sort of 90% passive, 10% active. But active has been gaining ground. So as an example, if we look at just the flows in June, active ETFs accounted for about 25% of flows, whereas passive 75%. So certainly gaining some ground. And I think that's there's more options out there. If investors really like the tax efficiency of that wrapper, they really had index-based options for a long time. There's a lot more other options to choose from now. So we're seeing a lot of people do that due diligence, underwrite those strategies and get comfortable. The other thing I'd point out is relative to US versus, say, international equity. So if we look, over the last 12 months, US equities have seen maybe 5 times the inflows that international has. But if we look just in the last month, that's actually been international equity that's overtaken US equity. So I think investors are starting to look abroad there as well.
When it comes to the action this week, what trends are you starting to see shape up? Obviously, we've had quite a bit of trade news this week. We also have big tech earnings.
Yeah, so I think people are definitely trying to look at on the international equity side, US equity side, all the stuff with tariffs, trying to understand, seeing some deals get done. That's a good thing. I think people are pretty optimistic about that. I personally am quite optimistic about seeing some of these deals get done. So that's good. I think you do have still everything that's been going on with the dollar. It's been a pretty good tailwind for non-US investments so far this year. You look at the difference between, say, the EFA hedged return or the EFA unhedged return, somewhere in the order of 10%. Another opportunity, again, for those non-US investments to be doing reasonably well. The other thing I think is worth pointing out, because there's a lot of disparity between, say, large cap and small cap returns. And particularly in the US, small caps have not really been in favor. Outside the US, that hasn't really been the case. You've seen small caps do pretty well in non-US developed markets. Over the last 5 years, you've seen small caps do really well in emerging markets. So I think there's a few opportunities for folks to kind of maybe look beyond. We obviously, you hear about the Mag 7, you hear about the S&P 500, what's going on, and those are big names. That's part of the marketplace, but there still is a lot more opportunity out there.
All right, speaking of more opportunity out there, our audience is always looking for good ETF picks to play the current market. So can you give us one? Please share the ticker. What's an ETF that you would recommend to play this current market, knowing that we also have that tariff deadline coming up on August the 1st?
Sure. So one I would throw out there for people. So I've been talking about small caps. I've been talking about non-US. I'll give you two. One is AVDV. The other one is AVDS. Both of those are international developed small cap strategies that we manage. The International Small Cap Value Strategy, AVDV, just crossed 10 billion in total assets under management. It's been around for a little more than 5 years, done very, very well relative to the category, relative to the indexes that are in the non-US developed small cap space. I think folks, sometimes it's a part of the market that gets overlooked, and a lot of the international strategies, even the active ones, a lot of them tend to focus more up cap. This is something that's going to give you a lot broader exposure to some of those developed economies and some smaller cap companies within there that we think is a great allocation add for people's portfolios.
So why do you want to focus on these smaller companies when we're talking about international investing? Why don't you just want to focus on the large cap companies, and specifically when it comes to this strategy in this current environment?
Yeah, so I would say two things, because I'm a big believer that you want to take the diversification that you can get. And so I think if you look at, a large cap strategy versus, say, an all cap strategy, there's a lot more companies down there in the small cap realm that again, some of these indexes, some of these strategies can overlook. And in my view, we're going to take that diversification where we can get it. And if you look historically, actually, very, very long term at where returns have come from, small cap companies that have good valuations and profitability have been some of the best performers long term. And that's in US, that's in non-US developed markets, and that's in emerging markets. So I'm a believer that valuations drive everything. And if we can find some attractive valuation opportunities down cap there, it can be a really good add. As an example, if we look back, over the last 5 years, again, in non-US developed markets, that strategy I was talking to you about with AVDV, that's outpaced, the large cap index in international developed markets. It's outpaced just the plain small cap index in international developed markets by a considerable margin. So in our mind, it's really this idea of it doesn't tend to get the same attention as maybe it should, that there still is a lot of opportunity out there. And I think particularly you've got, a lot of uncertainty as it relates to the current trade environment. And in my mind, that does allow for some of those small cap companies, some of those opportunities, maybe they can find a little bit of edge.
Phil, I'm going to tell you something. American Century is where I made my first investment. My uncle told me about mutual funds years ago. So it's kind of a full circle moment right now to get to talk to you. Phil McInnis, Avantis Investors by American Century Investments, Chief Investment Strategist. Really appreciate the pick and the conversation. You have a great day. And thank all of you for watching CNBC.com. I'm Frank Holland, anchor of Worldwide Exchange. Have a great day.